Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video we've got a couple of things to discuss, including a couple of signings, a couple of injury updates, some updates on the coaching and GM searches and where some of those situations sit right now, as well as a trade to announce and some trade rumors involving the Flyers and Senators. And go to all that coming up right now. Hello and welcome to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey Channel. Now, let's kick off today's video with a couple of signings that have happened over the past week. Definitely some interesting ones here. We'll start with a couple of guys who are extended on contract extensions. We'll start with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the Oilers have signed depth forward Philip Kemp to a 2-year contract extension now of average annual value of $775,000 and will start at the beginning of next year. Now, for Kemp, he was a 2017 7th round pick, just finished up his entry-level contract, been playing the last couple of years in the AHL, had 3 goals, 9 points in 55 games a couple of years ago. Last year had actually a pretty big point jump, getting up to 6 goals and 21 points in 71 games, so he looks like a decent player. Once again, I would probably say he's more of a minor league player right now. Maybe eventually he can go into like a maybe depth role for the Oilers as like a 7th defenseman, maybe eventually being a 3rd pair defenseman, but for the time being he's just a depth defenseman. So good to signing for the Oilers to get him locked up for the next couple of years and just gives them some more depth. With the Colorado Avalanche, same sort of thing. They signed defenseman Nathan Clerman to a 1-year contract extension that will have an average annual value of $775,000, and the deal once again beginning at the start of next year. Now for Clerman, he's been bouncing between the AHL and ECHL the past couple of years. A couple of years ago, he had a goal and a point in 7 AHL games, but had a pretty good ECHL point total, putting up 3 goals and 24 points in 54 games. So Clerman looked really good in the ECHL. He had 3 assists in 8 ECHL games this past year, but then was called up, played more of a regular AHL role, and he actually did quite well, putting up 3 goals, 15 points in 57 games. So Clerman looks like he's definitely been doing really well as like a HL defenseman. I'll probably expect him to stay there. Probably won't make the Avs roster, especially with how deep it is. Maybe if they got into enough injuries, he'll be able to get a shot. But in my opinion, Clerman's most likely going to just remain in the AHL. But still, good depth signing for the Avs. Then you've got the Vancouver Canucks, who signed Jet Wu to a 2-year contract extension now of an average annual value of $775,000, and the deal will be at the start of next year. Now, Wu was at one point viewed as a really good NHL level prospect, sort of fallen a little bit in the last couple of years, but still could, I think, eventually maybe be a good 3rd pair defenseman. He's been playing over in the AHL over the past couple of years. Had 2 goals, 8 points in 47 games a couple of years ago. This past year's put up 7 goals, 21 points in 68 games. So Wu looks really good. It looks like he's definitely been growing a lot. I would probably say he'll be back in the minors next year, but I think there's a possibility that maybe towards the end of next year, maybe the year after, he could definitely be an NHL level defenseman, even if it's just as like a 7th defenseman or a 3rd pair defenseman. But definitely, I think good signing for the Canucks, signing one of their more notable defensive prospects in Jet Wu, and hopefully he can continue to develop, do well. He can make the Vancouver Canucks lineup in the not-too-distant future. Then on top of these guys, you've had a couple of entry-level contracts be signed. First with the Buffalo Sabres, they signed prospect Ryan Johnson to a 2-year entry-level contract that will have an average annual value of $925,000, and the deal will begin at the start of next year. Now for Johnson, he was a late 1st-round pick back in 2019. He looked really good. He's been playing over in the NCAA over the past couple of years. He got 3 goals, 19 points in 39 games a couple of years ago. Had 4 goals, 18 points, 40 games this past year. So he's done really well. He's been putting up around 20 points in 40 games in the NCAA. So he looks really good. I'll probably think he maybe needs 1 year in the AHL just to continue development a little bit, but it wouldn't surprise me if he got a couple of looks next year at the NHL level, and it would not surprise me at all if next year, not this upcoming year, but the year after, Johnson was a pretty consistent, maybe 3rd pair NHL defenseman. So wouldn't be too surprised if that happened, as he's a really, really good defensive prospect. So good to see that the Sabres were able to sign him. I know there were some wondering if he was going to sign with the Buffalo Sabres, but he did wind up doing so. So good for the Sabres and good for prospect Ryan Johnson. Then you got Edmonton Oilers signing prospect Jaden Grube to a 3-year entry-level contract that will have an average annual value of $868,000, and deal will begin at the start of next year. Now, Grube was a 2021 third-round pick, actually of the New York Rangers. His signing rights were set to expire on June 1st, so May 31st, just about a week ago. Something I forgot to mention, but Grube was dealt his signing rights to the Oilers in exchange for a 5th-round pick in this year's draft. So it was a small trade, but the Rangers weren't going to sign Grube, so they gave him to Edmonton for a 5th-round pick just because Edmonton was willing to sign him, and he signs a 3-year entry-level contract. So good job for the Oilers to get a player who wasn't really going to sign with the Rangers, and they're able just to get him under contract. Grube's been playing over in the WHL over the past couple of years. Had 14 goals, 35.68 games a couple of years ago. This past year's, though, has actually done a lot better. Definitely improved a lot, putting up 18 goals and 67 points in 64 games. So it was over a point per game. He looks really good. So it was too bad that the Rangers couldn't re-sign him, and they weren't able to do so. But they moved him to Edmonton, so they at least get a 5th-round pick for the former 3rd-round pick. So seems decent. And the Edmonton Oilers are able to sign someone who I think eventually could be a good top 9 forward. I think Grube has that sort of potential. So good signing for the Oilers to get him under his entry-level contract. Probably go back to juniors next year, maybe the AHL. But in maybe 2 to 3 years' time, I could definitely see Grube being a good NHL level, maybe bottom 6 forward. So good news for the Oilers to sign him. And finally, with the Carolina Hurricanes, they sent Justin Robidas to a 3-year entry-level contract that have an average annual value of $825,000, and the deal will begin at the start of next year. Now, Robidas was a 2021 5th-round pick of the Hurricanes. He's a pretty good prospect. He plays center. He's been playing over in the QMJHL over the past couple of years. Been doing quite well. A couple of years ago, he had 30 goals and 82 points in 68 games. Looked really, really good. This past year, a little bit of a down year, putting up 25 goals and 78 points in 68 games. So still above 500, but not as dominant as the previous years. So pretty good seasons over the past couple of years for Robidas. I would expect him to probably either go back to juniors or the AHL next year, as he probably could still use a little bit more development, but maybe in a year or two, he can definitely be a good bottom 6 forward for the Canes. So I definitely think he could definitely have some sort of an NHL future, but definitely for the next year or two, he's probably going to be more of a junior or minor league forward. So good signing for the Hurricanes, but still probably going to be a year or two away from challenging for a roster spot. So once again, just to recap, good signing for the Canes, signing center Robidas to a entry-level contract, and he should get an NHL opportunity in the not too distant future, but still a couple years away. Same thing with Grube, acquired by Edmonton, was able to be extended. He's probably going to be a good player in a couple years' time at the NHL level. Ryan Johnson, probably going to spend next year in the minors, and then earn himself a consistent NHL role, maybe on the 3rd pair. So once again, all 3 ELCs that were signed are really, really good, and I think all should have NHL futures. Meanwhile, Klerman and Kemp, Klerman in Colorado, Kemp in Edmonton, were both just depth signings for the Oilers and the Avs, and I do like those signings to increase their depth a little bit. While the Vancouver Canucks signed Jet Wu, who's definitely been developing well in the AHL over the past couple of years, and I think maybe in time could still be a really good 3rd pair defenseman for the Canucks. So good signings all around. We'll get to the playoff update part of the video, but there's not really much to update. There have been no games since we last talked on Tuesday, so not really anything to update there. We do have Game 3 between the Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers taking place later tonight. So we'll definitely know after tonight if the Vegas Golden Knights are going to go up 3-0 and take the commanding 3-0 series lead to Saturday, or if the Panthers are able to get their first win of the series and get the series a little bit closer to 2-1. And I'll definitely be going over what happens tonight on my Saturday video that we'll get to in a couple of days. But definitely, no updates right now on the playoff situations. A quick update on the injury front. There was some talk that Radko Gudas, who left Game 2 due to an injury, was banged up going into Game 2. There was some talk that maybe he wasn't going to go for Game 3, but that sounded like the Panthers coach did say that Gudas should be in the lineup for tonight's game, so we'll wait and see. It was really a rough game for Gudas in Game 2, so hopefully he'll be able to go, and because he's a really big part of that defense, but it'll be really a big blow to the Panthers if he wasn't able to go. So definitely interesting to see. Also, with a non-playoff team, just a quick injury update. Ducks goalie Anthony Stolarz has been cleared to play, so Stolarz missed the last couple of months for the Anaheim Ducks due to injuries. He was definitely been banged up a lot this year, so just good to see him get cleared to play. He's in the final year of his deal, so he'll be a UFA at the start of next month, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see where he goes. I don't think he'll be back with the Ducks next year. Ducks have a pretty good indoor style, and they'll probably be looking for another goalie, but I'm not sure if it'll be Stolarz. So I could see Stolarz be a backup somewhere else. But definitely good to see that he's cleared to play and he should be healthy for training camp and the start of next season. So good new injury updates there. And that's all the injury updates I'm going to get to today. But there is some significant news on the coaching and GM front. So since we last talked, we said that the Carberry took the job in Washington, Brunette the job in Nashville, and Tree living with the new GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Well, we've now had a couple more coaching GM updates. So first, with the Anaheim Ducks, they signed Greg Cronin to be their new head coach in Anaheim. So Cronin does have some experience behind the bench at the NHL level. From 2011 to 2014, he was the assistant coach with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then from 14 to 18, he was the assistant and associate coach of the New York Islanders. So he does have some experience being on the bench at the NHL level. He has been the Colorado Eagles head coach for the past couple of years. The Colorado Eagles are the AHL affiliates of the Colorado Avalanche. So he's been coaching the AHL affiliates of the Avs. And he's been doing quite well. So I think getting Cronin to be their new coach is going to be good. I think a fresh voice in that Anaheim organization is going to do them good. Cronin seems to be a guy who's going to push his players. So definitely seems like a really good fit for Anaheim. They have a lot of good young players like Zegera, Terry, Drysdale. That good young decor who hasn't even made the NHL yet. Dostal and Net. So have a lot of good young players here. And I think getting a good coach behind the bench was an important thing to do for the Ducks this year. And I think they're going to get that here in Cronin. So good to see the Ducks get their head coach under contract, and now that situation's over for Anaheim. A bit of a surprising one, but it sounds like the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to hire former Maple Leafs coach Mike Babcock as their new head coach. Babcock's had tons of years of experience coaching at the NHL level. He coached the Anaheim Ducks from the 02 to the 04 season. Then he coached the Detroit Red Wings for about 10 years from the 05 to the 15 season. Then he coached the Maple Leafs from the 2015 to the beginning of the 2019 season, when he was fired on the beginning of November in 2019. Now, he didn't go off in the greatest of terms with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he had mentioned that he was going to retire, and he hasn't been an NHL coach for a while now. It sounds like he will be back behind the bench as the Columbus Blue Jackets head coach. So it's definitely an interesting signing. I know I've seen a lot of people say that after the way he left Toronto, that it's quite surprising that the Jackets would want to bring him in as the head coach. But that was 4 years ago, so Babcock could have changed. I don't think the Jackets would have brought him in as head coach if he hadn't changed at least a little bit. So I'm not going to say this is a bad signing for the Jackets until I see exactly what happens. I didn't think that John Tortorella would be a good fit with the Philadelphia Flyers and a lot of their young players, but it seems to have worked out actually quite well. So I'm not going to say this is going to be bad for the Jackets to be hiring. I mean, if they were going to hire him, they obviously got to think that he's going to be a good NHL coach with the Jackets. So definitely interesting to see if there's some players who don't really want to play for him. But I definitely think that I'm not going to say this is a good or bad contract signing yet until I see how the Jackets do under him. Like I said, the Philadelphia Flyers have done really well in the past year under Tortorella, and I wasn't exactly sure how they would do with that coaching fit. So not going to say much about Babcock, but it was an interesting signing given the fact that all indications were that he was retired, and just the way he was leaving Toronto was just bad all around. But there is another stipulation to this, and that is that the Jackets can't officially make Babcock their new head coach until July 1st. Just given the fact that even though Babcock was fired back in 2019, his contract with the Leafs will expire at the end of this past season. So on July 1st, when the new season kicks in, he'll be able to sign with the Jackets. So they haven't made it official yet, but definitely expect on July 1st the Jackets to name Mike Babcock their new head coach. So definitely an interesting signing there, but I'm not going to say it's a bad signing until I see how the Jackets do under Babcock. So definitely going to be interesting to see there. And then you also have the Pittsburgh Penguins making Kyle Dubas their president of hockey operations. Now, we know the Penguins fired their president and their GM in the offseason, firing both Hextall and Burke. So there was a lot of speculation that Dubas would be the new Pittsburgh GM. So he instead takes the hockey operations role. Now, even though he's not under the title of GM, there's a lot of people who think that he'll definitely be one of the voices behind most of the moves in Pittsburgh. It'll be sort of the same thing that Vancouver's done, where they have Patrick Allvin as the actual GM, but Jim Rutherford has a lot of say in all the trades and stuff like that, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see. But it sounds like Dubas signs like something like a 7-year deal with the Pittsburgh Penguins to become the president of hockey operations, and it does sound like they're still trying to sign a GM who can work with Dubas, maybe a younger person who can work with Dubas and grow into that GM role. But for the time being, it seems like Dubas will definitely be the GM for the Pittsburgh Penguins until they are able to get their GM. And even at that point, it does sound like Dubas will be having a lot of say in all the moves that Pittsburgh makes. But definitely, I don't think this is too much of a surprise. There was a lot of talk after Dubas was let go that he was possibly going to Pittsburgh or maybe even Ottawa. But there was a lot of talk around Pittsburgh. So they're able to get their new president. They still do have to find someone who can fill in the GM role, but for the time being, with Dubas signed, they should be able to commence with their off-season actions for the next little while. So once again, Babcock is probably going to be the Blue Jackets head coach. It should be announced on July 1st when his current contract in Toronto is ended. The Anaheim Ducks have now signed Greg Cronin to be their new head coach, and the Penguins have signed Kyle Dubas to be their president of hockey operations, and will have a lot of say in who's getting traded and all of the moves that the Penguins make. So although he's going to take the title of president of hockey operations, he's most likely also going to be a huge piece as a GM as well. But they're definitely still looking for an actual GM who can work with Dubas. And then also we're still looking at the Calgary Flames and New York Rangers, as those are the only two current teams right now who do not have an NHL head coach. So a lot of interesting head coach and GM updates. And now we go over to the big news that happened. Now, just a couple of hours after I took my video on Tuesday, there was a monster trade in the NHL. The first major trade that happened. As we talked about a week and a half ago, the Oilers were trading with the New York Rangers to acquire the group signing rights. And that was the okay trade, but it was nowhere near as big as this one. So it was a huge trade, 3-way deal. The Philadelphia Flyers, the LA Kings, and the Columbus Blue Jackets were all involved. So this is the way the deal breaks down. So the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to get Ivan Provorov. The LA Kings are going to retain 30% of the Ivan Provorov deal and also get depth defenseman Kevin Connaughton and depth forward Hayden Hodgson. And the Philadelphia Flyers get Cal Petersen, Sean Walker, Helgi Grans, the Kings 2023 first-round pick, which is 22nd overall, the Jackets either 2024 or 2025 second-round pick, and the Kings 2024 second-round pick. So breaking it down between all three of these teams, for the Jackets, there was a lot of speculation that they were looking for some defensemen. They want some bigger body veteran defensemen who can work well with their team. They have a lot of younger players like Boqvist. They have Bean. They have Blankenberg. They have Jurczyk, who should be making the NHL roster next year. So they have a lot of good young players, but they don't have a lot of experienced veterans, especially top 4 veterans who could help round out that team. So acquiring a big top 4 defenseman, especially after losing Vladislav Gavrikov, was a big need for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So they get it here. Provorov hasn't been doing overly fantastic the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, he had 10 goals and 31 points in 79 games. This past year, 6 goals, 27 points in 82 games. So he hasn't done overly fantastic. Ever since Matt Niskanen retired a couple of years ago, Provorov just hasn't been able to find the right partner. And there was a lot of frustration last year, and it sounded like there was going to be a trade at some point. It never happened around the trade line, so there's a lot of speculation that it was going to happen at some point this year, and it officially has. So I think this is a really good addition for Columbus. Provorov's a really big defenseman. He's a really good puck-moving defenseman. I think in Columbus, maybe on the second pair instead of a top pair role, he could definitely thrive. I think definitely it's a really good addition for the Jackets. On top of that, I also think that maybe a fresh start will do him good, as I think that relationship in Philadelphia really started to get sour. And on top of that, with the Kings retaining 30% of his salary, his cap hit that the Jackets are going to take is only $4.725 million. So it's not too much, just a hair over $4.5 million for a really good top 4 puck-moving defenseman who's going to help stabilize that top 4. So really good move for the Jackets. If you look at the Kings side, they needed to clear cap space. They were able to move Cal Petersen, who makes $5 million, and Sean Walker, who makes $2.6 million. As I talked about in my last video, the Kings were looking to move cap space so they can bring back Vladislav Gavrikov and go after a starting goaltender. They created a lot of cap space by moving those two players. Now, they retained about $2.025 million on Provorov's deal, which I don't think is too bad. They definitely still did really good there, still sharing those two contracts, but they do retain a little bit on Provorov, so it's not overly ideal. But it does get rid of the Petersen and Walker contract, which is huge for them. They also get a couple of depth players in Connaughton and Hodgson. Connaughton's played a couple of years in the NHL, has I think around 350 games of NHL experience, but spent the entirety of the last year in the minors and has been looking as more of a minor league forward in the past couple of years. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he was more of a depth forward with LA, especially given their depth on the defensive end. As for Hodgson, he's definitely had a couple of looks at the NHL level, but mostly been an AHL player. Once again, Kings have a really deep roster. There's a lot of players that have Hodgson, so in my opinion, he'd be more of a depth forward playing in the AHL. So getting a couple of depth guys is good. It helps them. But the key thing for the LA Kings in this deal was that they moved on from the Petersen and Walker contracts. As for Philadelphia, they got a haul in this trade. So they were able to take on the Cal Petersen contract. 2 years left, $5 million. At one point, Petersen was looking like he would be the goalie of the future for the Kings. Over the past few years, he's definitely gone down a lot. I mean, last year he only played 10 games, 3.75 goals against average, and an .868 save percentage before being placed on waivers and sent to the minors. He didn't really have fantastic numbers in the minors either. So definitely it seems like maybe a change of scenery to Philly, maybe a fresh start will help him. When I was talking about the Philadelphia Flyers offseason plans on both my YouTube videos and also my blog, which you can check out in the link in the description below, I said that the Philadelphia Flyers view Sam Ersson as the goalie of the future. There is also a good chance that Carter Hart could be dealt, which we will talk about in a little bit. But I said that you have Sam Ersson as your backup. You're going to need someone who can work with him at the NHL level. I think Petersen could do that. The Flyers are not looking to be overly good next year. So if Petersen's not fantastic, I don't think it'll be really worrisome for the Flyers. But I think if Petersen can definitely do well, he can revitalize his career over in Philly and then maybe be dealt at some point in the next couple of years and show that he's still a really good starting goaltender. So in my opinion, Petersen, he's still got a lot of work to do, but I think in Philly he can definitely do well. Sean Walker, apparently he's really good friends with Philadelphia Flyers player Morgan Frost, so there's another upside there. But Walker's a really good third pair defenseman. He's sort of been boxed out of the LA Kings lineup. A couple of years ago, he only got into 6 games, putting up 2 assists due to injuries. This past year, though, he actually did really well, getting to 70 games, putting up 3 goals and 13 points. So he definitely looked really good. Walker's a solid third pair defenseman entering the final year of his deal. So if the Flyers are really not doing too well at the trade deadline, maybe he could be a trade chip for the Philadelphia Flyers. It would not surprise me at all. But with Provorov leaving, they need another defenseman. Walker could definitely be that guy. So a couple of not overly bad players, but just not on good contracts. They also get Helge Grans, who was a 2020 second-round pick of the LA Kings. Really good D prospect who has probably a potential of being like a second or third pair defenseman in the future. He's a really good big defenseman, and he's definitely going to be hard to play against at the NHL level. So probably still going to need maybe 1 or 2 more years in the minors to continue to develop. But Grans looks like a really good prospect who I think in the next couple of years could make the NHL roster. So once again, Grans is a really good D prospect. Walker's a really good third pair defenseman. Petersen, if he can do well after the change of scenery, he can definitely still be a really good goaltender. So those are 3 really good players. And then they get 3 good draft picks. So they get the Kings 2023 first-round pick, which is 22nd overall. Now this pick, the Kings dealt to the Jackets of the trade line for Vladislav Gavrikov and Jonas Korpisalo. So this pick goes from LA to Columbus, and now Columbus is dealt it to Philadelphia. So while this is LA's pick, this is actually from Columbus. Then the Columbus Blue Jackets moved a conditional 2024 second-round pick to the Flyers. The condition is after next year's first round, the 2024 draft, the Jackets will have to choose whether to move their 2024 second or their 2025 second to the Philadelphia Flyers. So where the Flyers are going to get a second-round pick, it's just a matter of either is it 2024, 2025, and then they also get the LA Kings 2024 second-round pick. So a first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, a good D prospect, and a good third pair defenseman and maybe backup goaltender for Ivan Provorov. That's a really good trade for Philadelphia, and I think it definitely signifies that Daniel Briere, who's now the new GM in Philadelphia, is really gearing towards a rebuild. So, in my opinion, I don't think there are any winners or losers in this deal. Jackets improved their top four with Provorov. That was a big win for them. Kings clear a lot of cap space. They can now go sign Gavrikov and have a little bit more cap space to go after a goaltender. That helps them. And also on Philadelphia's side, they get 3 good draft picks, which will help with their rebuild, a good prospect, and a couple of cap dumps. But they're probably going to be going through the same route as the Blackhawks and the Coyotes have over the past couple of years, which is take on bad contracts if it means that they can get draft picks. So a really, really good trade for all 3 of these teams, and it definitely signifies that trade season is now upon us. And there's definitely going to be a ton more rumors over the next couple of weeks, as well as a ton of trades. So definitely was not expecting one of these trades to happen before the Stanley Cup final was done, but it's definitely a really interesting trade. That's definitely going to kickstart what is going to be a really busy next couple of weeks. So that's my opinion on the trade. And then just a couple of trade rumors here to finish off the video. First with Philadelphia Flyers. Now, right when the Provorov deal was picking up steam and there was a lot of talk saying that it was getting done quickly, there was also some credible sources that were saying that Carter Hart was going to be dealt as well. Now, Carter Hart hasn't been dealt at this point yet, but it does sound like the Flyers are not only listening to him, but are willing to possibly move him for the right package. So there's definitely a few teams, in my opinion, who would definitely be good fits for Carter Hart, who are looking for starting goaltenders this year. You got the Carolina Hurricanes. They have Kochetkov, but Anderson and Raanta are both UFAs. If they really wanted a good goaltending upgrade, they could try and go for Hart. I know it's going to be really impossible to do given the fact that Pennsylvania are rivals, but the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think, would make sense for Hart, just given the fact that Jarry is the UFA. They most likely want to get a new goalie tandem. They still have the Smith under contract. They could bring in Hart to be their starter. I think that would be a really good option for them. Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo, I could also see being in the conversation for Hart. All 3 could definitely use a starting goaltender. Maybe not long term, given the fact that Ottawa has Sogard, Buffalo has Levi, and Detroit has Kosa and System, who all seem to be really good, possibly eventually starting level goaltenders. So maybe not long-term goalie fits, but they will need some help in the goalie position in the next couple of years. So I could see guys like Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa having interest. I've also seen some people say Montreal and Toronto should be guys to watch. Personally, I don't see the fits, given the fact that Toronto still has Samsonov, who's done well, and that Montreal is still a little bit more of a rebuild mode. But given the vast amount of times that Hart's been linked to Montreal, and the fact that it sounds like Toronto could have some interest, those 2 teams will be teams to watch as well. Some other surprising ones I would say in the Central will be Winnipeg and St. Louis. If St. Louis were to move on from Jordan Binnington, which I've talked about a couple times over the past year, Hart would be a really good option for them, especially if they're trying to get a little bit younger and continue to do well. So it's possible, a little bit less likely, but it's possible that St. Louis might have interest. The Jets, there's a lot of talk right now that they're going to move Hellebuck. They don't want to rebuild, they want to retool. If they move Hellebuck, they bring in Hart, they're still a really good position with the goaltending. So I could definitely see Winnipeg have some interest. If you look at the Pacific Division, the Oilers, I think, could have some interest. They would have to try and find a way to move Jack Campbell, but Hart's from Alberta, so it'll be sort of a homecoming for him. So if they could find a way to move Campbell and have Hart be their new starter, I think that could be another fit as well. So those are some of the teams I'll be looking out for here. If the Flyers do trade Hart, they could definitely get a huge package. I'll probably say something like maybe a first-round pick and a decent prospect. In my opinion, would be good for Hart, but definitely, it sounds like Hart is on the market, and there could be a ton of NHL teams who have interest in Hart. So definitely going to be something to keep our eye out. It sounds like it could be coming to a head in the not-too-distant future, so something to be really keeping our eye on over the next couple days and weeks. And then with the Ottawa Senators, there was a couple of reports stating over the past couple of days that Alex DeBrincat doesn't want to sign a long-term extension until he knows the future of the organization with the new ownership and stuff like that. And the new ownership's probably not going to happen for the next couple of weeks. So with that in mind, the Sens not really wanting to sign him to a one-year deal and risk losing him as a free agent. There's a lot of talk right now that DeBrincat may be a trade option right now for the Sens. The Sens might be testing the waters on a possible DeBrincat trade. Now, there were some talks about this on the Insider Trading video last night, as well as the Elliot Friedman 32 Thoughts podcast. Friedman said to look at more centralized teams. like a Detroit or a Dallas. And then on Insider Trading, they said that it seems like the Sens are trying to ask DeBrincat to compile a list of teams that he would be interested in trading for, sort of like Matthew Tkachuk. If they were to trade him, they would want to trade him somewhere where he would be willing to sign a long-term extension. And if they were to give him to another team where he can sign an extension right away, they could get a lot more in return. So it would definitely be interesting to see. But as much as I do still think that the Sens should try and keep DeBrincat, if DeBrincat isn't willing to go long term until they know the future of the organization and that future is still a couple weeks away, then there is a likely possibility he could be traded. So some teams to watch out for, in my opinion, would be the Hurricanes and the Islanders, two teams in the Metro Division who need scoring help in the top six. So if they were able to compile a decent enough package, I think Carolina and NYI could both have interest in acquiring him. Detroit seems like a very likely candidate, and I've seen a lot of people say that Detroit should be a landing spot for DeBrincat, but once again, in the Ottawa division. So as much as DeBrincat would probably love to play in Detroit, I'm not sure if Ottawa would really want to deal him there just because he's in their division. Just as much as he would like to probably play there, I'm just not sure if Ottawa will be willing to move him there. Another couple would be the Calgary Flames in the Pacific Division and maybe the Seattle Kraken. I could see Seattle try and get a game breaker this year who can help them in their top six. They don't have as many prospects and picks, so it's going to be a little bit harder for them, but I could see Seattle being interested. We know that the Calgary Flames are going to be looking to try and improve this team this year. They still have Huberdeau. I could definitely see them try and get DeBrincat to try and improve that team. So Calgary will be another team I'll be wondering about. Some central teams I could see would be Dallas, Nashville, St. Louis, and Winnipeg. Dallas is a really good team. They went to the Western Conference Final this past year. They could definitely use another top six forward who can put up goals. So there would be definitely another team. Like I said, Nashville, if they're not looking to do a long rebuild and they're looking for a quick retool, and like I said, they could definitely use a top six forward or a top nine forward, I think he could definitely be a really good fit on that team. So if they were willing to part with some players and picks, maybe Nashville's on the landing spots. And once again, I'm saying St. Louis and Winnipeg. St. Louis already said that they wanted to acquire players who are in the same sort of age range as guys like Kyrou and Thomas and sort of build around that core. DeBrincat fits that. They also have a couple of first-round picks they'd be willing to move. They have a couple of good prospects. I would not be surprised if St. Louis was in on this. And with Winnipeg, like I said, they want to go for a retool. There's a lot of talk that Dubas could be moved, Scheifele, Wheeler, Hellebuck. If they got decent packages for those guys, I could see them try and put up a package to try and get DeBrincat, just to keep them competitive, as they still have good guys like Connors, Ehlers, Perfetti, a couple guys in the minors. I could see DeBrincat being a really good fit with Winnipeg. So those are some of the fits I see, but definitely it sounds like DeBrincat is at least being considered for being traded and could be dealt in the not-too-distant future. But definitely, love to hear what you think. What's your thoughts on the Provorov deal? Which team do you think wins? Or do you think, as I do, that it was a win-win for all three teams? In your opinion, does Hart get traded? And if so, which team do you think Hart will be dealt to? Let me know down in the comments. And in your opinion, does DeBrincat get dealt? Or does DeBrincat get signed? And if he does get dealt, which team does he go to? Definitely let me know down in the comments. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video and subscribe. I also do a blog. I talk about news, rumors, trade analysis, stuff like that. So definitely check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.